734 times, but everybody wants to know, how did you go from playing basketball for your national team to being a web developer?
Okay, so our coach is this really fine elderly gentleman who does all his notes handwritten beautifully. And I used to help around like typing documents, printing stuff, setting up the printer, fixing the computer. And one day he was like, "Hey Jing, you're pretty good with computers. That means you can build websites, right?" And I was like, yes, maybe. And so why don't you do something about the association website? I was like, okay. And so I just, consulted with my very good friend Google. And
Nice.
Google gave me a lot of great advice. I had one skill at the time, and that was I knew that you could right-click, and you could do something called inspect element, and you could steal other people's code.
You could be inspired by other people's code, you mean?
I'm sure. So the first thing that I came up for him was actually this patchwork of different websites that I thought looked cool at the time, just patched together. And he was like, I think it was a case of doing something was better than nothing at all. So he looked at it and was like, oh, that's not bad. I'd like to add some content. And I'm like, that wasn't a feature requirement. What do you mean content? And so I started, learning a bit more about content management systems and stuff like that. I realized that, and then my roommate pointed out to me, she was like, "You're spending a lot of time on this website thing, aren't you?" I was like, it's fun though. And that's how I got started, actually, just by accident.
How did you take it to becoming A, a professional, and B, an international public speaker who's greeted with acclaim by everybody?
I think a lot of it was also luck, in the sense that I got a lot of opportunities that came my way. But for the speaking, I think it definitely started off with writing, because I have a personal blog. And, well, an interesting thing about that personal blog was that I started it because I wasn't really happy at my first job. And you're not supposed to take the code that you write with you when you leave, right? But the thing is, a lot of the issues that I encountered, a lot of the things that I had to spend hours fixing, I knew that I couldn't remember them, but I knew I would encounter the same issues again. So I actually said, okay, I will sort of record these incidents down as, learning opportunities on my blog posts. And technically, I don't mention what project it was. It was just, this is a situation that I encountered, this is how I fixed it, and then I started writing blog posts from there. And from there, I think I was approached by a few publications who asked me if I wanted to write articles for them, and I was like, sure, why not? And so the writing sort of evolved into speaking at local meetups. And eventually, because in Singapore, we have a completely volunteer-led organization called engineers.sg. It's completely volunteer-based, but they strive to try to record every single tech meetup in Singapore. So I know that a lot of conferences actually would like CFPs to include like videos of you speaking. It could be like a 30-second, 2-minute clip. And I didn't have to record that of myself. It feels kind of awkward. I don't know how actors do it, but I already had like a number of recordings. So that was a big plus. So I got my first full-length talk in Hong Kong last year. And from there, that was where I met you, actually. And from there, somebody in the audience was organizing a conference, thought, hey, maybe, this person could speak at my conference, and that's how it got started. And that's how I got here. And that's why I'm here in Kyiv.
And you've spoken in, so you were in Hong Kong for WebConf Asia.
Yeah.
Then you were in St. Petersburg with Vadim?
Yeah, with Vadim.
Vadim, is it Vadim in the room? Vadim Makiyev?
Can't see him at all. It's too bright.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Vadim's a great guy, and everybody should go to HTML Academy and Web Standards meetups. And then what, it was Tel Aviv,
Yes,
was
it
it?
was Tel Aviv.
And now here.
Yeah.
And something in between?
I was at Smashing Conf last month.
Of course you were.
Thank you, Vitaly, for inviting me. I don't know where he is.
So basically, if any of you want to have like free travel around the world and stay in posh hotels, just start writing and start speaking at local meetups. It's still the way forward. I'm glad to know this because this is how I got into it like 15 years ago. So
Still works.
it still works. That's great to hear. Did you find when you started to do international speaking that people were a little bit kind of surprised that Chinese subjects were being offered? Or I suppose what I'm asking is, have you noticed a greater increase in interest about Chinese typography, etc., as the world slowly wakes up to the fact that this century belongs to Asia?
I think a lot of the feedback that I got is that it's an interesting topic. It's like people sort of know, like I've heard about this thing, but it's not directly relevant to me, so I never really bothered to find out. But I think a lot of people at the back of their minds, they know that, China seems to be this rising power in the world today, but honestly, at this point in time, it's still very Western dominated, this world that we live in. So I think when I talk about these topics, and a big reason why I want to talk about these topics is I feel that it's, first of all, I am ethnically Chinese, so it's like I really want more people around the world to have a better understanding or clear up some misunderstandings about Chinese. And I think it's interesting to have a different perspective. Like, I'm pretty interested in languages as well, and one of the key points I got while learning a bit more about languages is how much it affects a person's way of thinking about things, from simply the grammar and the structure of the language. I heard this, I was listening to a podcast recently that talked about, I think it's on West African languages, where they don't have the concept of I am, he is, she. They don't have that because when it's not needed, because you are right here in front of me. Your being is, it's not something that you have to declare because it's accepted that you're there. And that's a structure of how the language works and how it affects a person's worldview. And I found that really interesting, and I think that the internet, like I mentioned, seems to be overwhelmingly English-speaking at the moment. And like even in this audience, English is not the first language for a lot of people, but we sort of force ourselves to use English because the internet is mostly English anyway. But I think there is value in addition to English, because I mean programming languages largely use English-based syntax, but when we produce content, we could also consider creating more content in our own local languages, just slowly increasing the amount of locally relevant content, like in every respective region and country.
Absolutely. I mean, we've spoken about this, and when I did my talk in Singapore, the same conference you were at, a lot of places in the world, people don't access the internet simply because they don't read English, and so there's not locally relevant content to them, so they don't feel the need to go to the internet. It's not about connectivity or affordability, it's about local relevance.
Yeah.
Do you still play basketball?
Yes, I do. I don't play on an international level anymore, but I still play with the same club team that I started out with when I was like 15, and some of the teammates that I have, we've been together since we were like before I was this tall. So we've been together for maybe coming up 20 years now, but so it's really nice to have a chance to play together with like these childhood friends.
So you're still good?
Good is very subjective.
Do you reckon you could kick my ass in a game of basketball, or would I win?
I don't know if you have any hidden talents. Like you could, be a secretly, superstar in I don't know which corner of the world, but you just kept it on the down low and didn't let anybody know about it.
We'll shoot some hoops later. Ladies and gentlemen, give a big round of applause to Hui Jing.